wrote this pragmatic guide to help you decide where to live because when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to live, I came across so many common sense guides with incredibly obvious statements like, if you don't like the snow, move somewhere warm. Or if you want to live in a big city, move to a big city. Thanks. That's super helpful. You know what is helpful though? Liking this video and subscribing to this channel. It literally doesn't cost you a dime and means the metaphoric world to me. Thanks, guys. Anyways, I was about 25, 26 years old, still living at my parents' house in my childhood bedroom. You know, I had a stable job, I was running my property management company, I had purchased 2 properties that I was renting out, and it was just super comfortable to stay at my parents' house. I didn't really have to worry about as many expenses. You know, I didn't have to pay rent. My parents helped me out with a bunch of meals and stuff. And my girlfriend at the time, we had been dating for probably about 6 months. She's like, you know, Matt, you're probably at a point where you should move out of your parents' house. And she was right. She was right. I was 25, 26, stable job, stable income. I was simply just living at home to save money, which is important, but you know, at some point it's good to have that year independence. And so I decided I'd start looking for a new place to live. She's right. I don't really need to live with my parents anymore. I should take this like next step in my own independence and move out and find some place that I really would like to live. But the problem was there were so many options and I didn't really know where to go. Fortunately for me, the decision was probably easier than it might be for you, just because both my family and my girlfriend's family lived in the same general area that we were at. She already had an apartment there. I had rental properties there. So I wasn't really looking on a national scope. However, this guide will still help you figure out on a national scope where you might want to move. The first thing that I think you should really think about is your stage of life. And what I mean by this is like, are you single and maybe just out of college? Are you dating someone? Do you have kids? Are you married? These things will really make a big impact on helping you decide the geographic location that you want to move to. If you're single and you really don't have anything tying you to one spot in particular, it's a lot easier to kind of expand the geographic area that you'd consider than if you're dating someone and maybe they have family nearby, maybe they don't want to move. Or if you have a child and maybe they're in school already and they've got some good friends that you wouldn't want to pull them away from. These are kind of some decisions that certainly restrict your geographic area that you're considering. Additionally, in the same sense, you know, if you have children, school district is probably very important to you. If you're single or even if you've got a significant other, you don't have to worry about school districts. Maybe you want to be really close to a downtown area so that you can walk to restaurants or bars or hiking and recreational activities that you can do with your family. So basically, the stage of life that you're at is probably the first thing that you should consider when you're deciding geographically where you want to live. The second thing that I think you need to come up with is a list of your needs versus your wants. This can be difficult for people because what you think is a want might be a need, and what you think is a need might be a want. For instance, maybe you think you need 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. But if it's just you, why do you need 3 bedrooms? You know, maybe you really only need a 1-bedroom apartment or a studio apartment. These things can really help you figure out what is immensely important to you. I would classify needs as places, activities, benefits, or amenities that you use very frequently, or maybe that you don't use quite as frequently, but have a very outsized benefit to you, such as maybe a huge time savings or a huge cost savings. One way to help you narrow this list down would be to turn on the location history of your Google Maps app. If you do it for like 30 days or even like 2 weeks, what this will do is it will let your Google Maps track your locations for whatever period of time that you're tracking. And then you can use that data to go back and look at, okay, these are the places that I've been to the most in this last 30 days. And that will really help you figure out, okay, these are the things that I like most or that I will need at my new location where I'm moving. For instance, maybe you think that proximity to an airport is really important to you because you go on a lot of business trips. But when you track your data through Google Maps, you find that you haven't actually traveled for business in the last month. You know, it might feel like you travel for work a lot, but if you're only traveling for work twice a year or 3 times a year, maybe being 45 minutes or an hour from the airport is okay rather than being 10 or 15 minutes from the airport. You're just not going to the airport enough to make it true need for you. Similarly, if you find that you're going to the gym every day, having a gym nearby is gonna be really important. Saving that extra 5 or 10 minutes to get to the gym is gonna save you, round trip 10 to 20 minutes a day, which adds up over time. Basically, you can use this data to figure out what hobbies do you go to a lot? Do you go to basketball courts or pickleball courts, tennis courts? Help you figure out what are the things that you're using most frequently. Wants, on the other hand, kind of are anything that you could live without. So if you like warm weather, move somewhere warm is a want. I wouldn't classify that as like something that you would need. I live in Michigan, so we have 4 seasons. It's 20 degrees in the winter and 90 degrees in the summer. We get warm and cold, but in the winter, I just don't go outside very much. Yeah, I prefer the warm weather, but I'm not gonna move somewhere just because of that. Other things that might be wants for you are proximity to beaches or mountains or hiking trails. These are things that you probably would use if you had them nearby, but you wouldn't use them all the time. Probably much less than if you had a gym membership and you needed a gym nearby. Unless, of course, you're like 80% of gym goers and don't actually use your gym membership. Then maybe not. Other wants could be like the square footage of the place that you're trying to move to, or whether you have a garage or a basement, or a guest bedroom or a yard. These are all things that would be nice to have. So once you have your needs and wants list all laid out, it'll make it a lot easier to figure out the rest of the criteria and help you decide what makes the most sense with the location that you decide to move to. The next thing that you should consider is the cost of living in the locations that you'd consider moving to. First up would be like housing. So what would it cost to buy something? What would your mortgage payment be and your property taxes? Or what would it cost to rent? Then you want to consider your transportation costs. In a downtown area, maybe you don't need a car. In Michigan, we're required to have no-fault car insurance, which means that if we get into a car accident or are hit by someone who doesn't have car insurance, our insurance will cover it. It makes car insurance in Michigan pretty expensive. Other areas don't require that, and if you're living in a downtown area, you don't need it at all. You still have public transportation costs, so what is that gonna cost you monthly? If you're in an area that you do need a vehicle, are you gonna purchase a car or lease a car? Do you know how many miles a year you're gonna be driving? These are things that you really should consider, because leasing a car might save you a lot of money because you don't have to worry about maintenance once you pay your car off. Plus the payment's gonna be a lot less. However, if you drive 20,000 miles a year, you're gonna have a hard time in a lease because most leases don't go that high. Other cost of living items that you should consider are food and groceries, childcare if you have kids, income taxes, lifestyle expenses such as like entertainment, going to the movies, going to the bars. Are there shows? If you live in a big city, maybe you've got Broadway or clubs. What are the property taxes in the area you're looking at? Does the city have its own income tax in addition to the state's income tax, in addition to federal income taxes? These are things that can be really important, because an extra 5 or 10% tax on everything is gonna make a big difference on your take-home pay. That's gonna add a lot of cost to your expenses. Finally, our healthcare costs. Obviously, the United States is not known for having low-cost healthcare, but if you're moving to Canada, they've got universal healthcare, so maybe that's a huge cost savings for you. The last 2 things that you should consider once you've thought about your needs and your wants, your cost of living, and your stage of life is demographics and crime. Demographics can be important because it can make you feel more at home with where you're living. You want to live in a place where there are more people your age. You should definitely consider that when moving somewhere. Alternatively, family status. If you have kids, you probably want to live somewhere where there's going to be other kids nearby, so that your kids can have friends to play with or other kids to play with. And, politics can come into this as well. If you're a staunch liberal, moving to the middle of Wyoming, it's probably not going to be a place that you feel at home, because there's going to be a lot of conservative people there. Same thing if you're super conservative, moving to Chicago is probably not a great idea because your politics are not going to align. You're not going to feel as welcome there as if you move to a place where you have politics in common with the majority of the people there. For crime and safety, generally you have to check by each city, and it can even vary by neighborhood, but If you check with the police department in the cities that you're considering most closely, they should be able to tell you which areas of the city have the lowest crime rates and the types of crime that is seen in the different parts of the city. That can really help you, make a final decision between one neighborhood versus another neighborhood. And it can come down to something as simple as the north side of the street has much heavier crime than the south side of the street. It just might be the way that it happened to work out. These are things that are kind of tough to know without talking to the local police department or people in the local area to figure out what part of the city would work best for you. Once you've narrowed the geographic location down based on your needs and wants and your cost of living and the demographics, before figuring out the crime, it might be helpful to go and visit the city that you're thinking about or the cities that you're thinking about. Say you've narrowed the list down to 5 metropolitan areas. I would highly recommend that you do not go and just move somewhere without at least visiting the city first. In my case, my needs were that I needed at least 2 beds and at least 2 bathrooms. I wanted a place that once I decided to move on from that home, I could end up renting it out and using it as an additional rental in my portfolio. And I needed it to be near my other properties and work so that I could get to work easily and make sure I didn't have to travel too far for that. And then my wants were a basement and a garage. I wanted to be walking distance to a downtown area so that I could walk to bars and restaurants. I wanted kind of a diverse area with young people. And I wanted a home that I could add value to. So I wanted something that was, not in terrible condition, but I wanted something that was a little outdated so that I could, update the kitchen or update the bathrooms and add value to it. So if I ever did want to sell it, I could add a ton of value and make some money on the home. Finally, since I lived at home with my parents, the financial side of it was really important to me. And so I wanted to make sure that wherever I moved, it would fit very comfortably inside my budget. Ultimately, I decided to move to Ferndale, Michigan. I was able to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, walking distance to downtown Ferndale, where there's a ton of great restaurants, there's some bars, there's a ton of young people, and it's a really diverse area. And it was able to keep me really close, within 20 minutes of both my family and my now wife's family. And I was able to, stay within probably 10, 15 minutes of work. So using this whole framework, I was able to really figure out what would be the spot that would work best for me. And then it makes it just so much easier and stress-free when you know that you've really thought out your whole process of deciding where to move to. As a final note, here are some common mistakes that people make when trying to decide where to live. First is focusing too much on amenities and not enough on necessities. Yes, I have succumbed to this as well. Back in college, the house we rented my senior year of college had a pool table in it. That was honestly the biggest selling point of this house. The house was disgusting. It had no countertop space. It was painted all sorts of different colors. There was, holes in the wall. The place was disgusting, but it had a pool table, and me and my roommates were like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. We got a pool table. We moved in. It didn't have pool cues, didn't have pool balls. We did not use that pool table once the entire year. Not once. We focused too much on the amenities and we didn't even consider the necessities. The home was disgusting, it was cheap, so I guess that's a necessity, but don't focus on amenities. 2 is not doing enough research. Too many people will just move somewhere without really putting much thought into it, and then they can find that they're not near anything that they want. They don't have grocery stores nearby. They have to get a car because they didn't think about how close they were to work, and maybe they thought that they were gonna have access to public transit. Deciding where to move is one of the most important decisions you will ever make, so make sure you do some research. 3rd is not visiting the location before moving. Similar to the last one, just visit it. It's not that hard to go and spend a few days somewhere. I know it feels expensive to do that, but the couple $100s you're gonna spend in a weekend, or maybe $1,000 that you'll spend including flight, the amount of money you're gonna spend traveling somewhere and checking it out pales in comparison to the cost of signing a lease somewhere at a place that you've never visited, and then you're stuck in a lease for a year, and you're paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars when you're living somewhere that you don't even like. It can be really miserable. It can really hurt you financially. So make sure you at least visit the place before you sign a lease or purchase a home. 4th is not being excited about the move. If you're not excited about the location that you're moving to, or the job you're gonna have, or the friends you have there, or what's around the location that you're moving to, don't move. Life is too short to, not be excited about where you're gonna be spending the next year of your life. Make sure that you're excited about it. If you're not excited about it, it's not the right place to go. And 5 is general impatience and procrastination. Are what most people do because it forces you to just make a decision on the spur of the moment at the last minute. It keeps you from doing research. It keeps you from visiting the location. It keeps you from being excited about the location. Don't be impatient and don't procrastinate on this decision. Like I said before, it is one of the single most important decisions you will ever make in your life. So make sure you put some time and thought into it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found this framework helpful. Make sure you go through all the steps when you're deciding where to move to. If you made it this far, drop a pin emoji in the comments so that I know that you made it to the end. And don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe below so that you're notified about any new videos I put out. Thanks guys, I appreciate it. Have a good one.